Hey guys, I'm an intrapreneur. And that basically means I've been working in major corporations for the last 15 years in trying to change the status quo, in trying to get new things going in terms of innovation. And so I'm going to be talking about entrepreneurship and corporate venturing. But one of the challenges that I see with companies today, and this comes actually from a conversation I had as well with a former chairman of a Fortune 500 company in the US. And I asked him, what's the number one thing that prevents innovation in big companies? And he said, well, don't let them grow big. Because the bigger the company gets, the more stuck they get in terms of their agility and ability to innovate and find new things. So how do you make this big company act and become more like a nimble ecosystem? How do you make it act like it's a small startup that's able to move as the small startup, but still can leverage the assets, the capabilities, and the talent that it has? So I'm going to try to talk a little about that. But first, let me start by telling you a bit of a story of a company that's nearly 90 years old, and it has more or less just one product. And that's this one. And let me do a quick poll among you guys. Which of you have been playing with a piece of plastic like this when you were a child? Great, that was close to 100%. How many of you have children now that are playing with this? Fantastic, thanks guys, appreciate it. And now, final question, please be honest, it's a little tricky. Who of you are still playing with this? Oh, fantastic, thanks. And actually, it's amazing how many adult fans that there is around Lego. We call them AFOLs, adult fans of Lego. And they're now a key part of the way that we innovate and develop our products, because we found out, that among this AFOL community, there was more than 10,000 PhDs. Half of them working within science, and in space, half of NASA is probably part of this. So why not leverage all that capability and power? So I'm going to be talking a little about how we ventured into understanding the bigger aspects of becoming an ecosystem rather than a very finite company. But, the break is very strong, and this is a very, strong icon, right? But it wasn't always so that the company realized this power that it had. And actually what happened during the 90s was that it realized we had just one product. We're actually very vulnerable. What happens if people don't need this anymore? We should diversify, and that was what the consultants told them as well. Diversify, you've got a strong brand, why don't you do a whole bunch of other stuff? And the company did that. And then in 2003, they almost went bankrupt. It was so close that Mary Lynch flew over from the US to meet the founders of the company, the family that still owns the company, and said, it's over. Cut your losses. Luckily, he refused, and he said, this is, my family's life work. He put in all his spare cash, about 300 million euro at the time. That was everything he had. Saved the company and said, we need to understand who we are. And two things had happened. One was that the company forgot a little bit about the brick. They said, well, that's a dumb piece of plastic. Let's do a lot of other things. So they abandoned some of that power that was in this system. And at the same time, they spent a lot of cash in diversifying into areas they had no idea how to venture into. And there was only one mode, and they call this sort of big bang. That means they went in massively into new spaces. So after this, we said we need to stick to the brick. We need to understand what are the core capabilities that we are really good at, and what is the core DNA that should be part of any experience that we launch. And from that platform, we should start innovating. So that was an important message and a learning from the company. And I think it's part of then saying, so shouldn't companies just stick to what they're good at? Isn't that the learning? Isn't that the main learning from this experience? And shouldn't Lego do it? Well, it's still just one product. And the challenge is, and you know this, that the world is turning dramatically radical. And radical is normal. And what does that mean? It means that the time you have from something is radically new in the market to the mainstream commodity gets shorter and shorter. So as a first mover, you have less and less time to recoup on your investment. As a second mover, you have almost no time to catch up. So, and this happens even for a toy company. So I put some of the things up that are affecting the toy industry, and these are all the usual suspects that you know very well. Because what happens when toys using artificial intelligence becomes intelligent and can start acting and behaving based on the interaction with a child. And then adding robotics, so now the toy can actually move and behave depending on the interaction with the child. You add sound and voice. Now the child can have a conversation with its toy. And then if you connect all the toys can actually play together. So when the child leaves the bedroom, the toys will still be playing. And when it comes back, so it's really bringing Toy Story to life. On top of that, you can add technology that allows the children to augment the world they're looking at. So the second they imagine something, it comes alive in front of them. And finally, you can also empower the user to co-create the experience. Through additive manufacturing and 3D printing, they can now print their own elements, they can print their own toys. If they will, they can design them. So all these things are great, and they can do powerful things. But, and obviously this is a challenge for a company that produces plastic bricks. But the real question to ask here is not so much what will change and when and how, because these are difficult to answer. The real question to ask is, how do we take a lead in these new technologies? How do we actively say, what is it that we want to see these technologies do for our future users? Because all these things could do great things for kids, right? They can empower creativity. They can empower them to be the builders of tomorrow and creators. But it can also do the opposite. It can pacify the kids. It can basically hook them into the matrix where they're just consuming ever more impressive experiences. And in fact, this is what we're seeing at the moment. Future generations of kids are less creative than any prior generation. The torrent scores, which measures the ability to be creative, are the lowest for the new generations of kids. And this is very scary because at the same time we're saying our future workforce needs to be more creative than anyone previous to that. So that's a challenge. And why is this happening? It's because they're consuming very powerful experiences that almost eliminates their own need to fill in the gaps. They don't need to be creative. They don't need to have imagination. It's all happening for them. So there's a huge responsibility, a responsibility that Lego says we need to not only just pursue these technologies that can do magic, we need to figure out how to humanize them and how to make them really beneficial for the future generations. So that's a big responsibility, and I think in all industries, there's a big responsibility in how do we leverage these technologies to actually do good. And to overcome that, we obviously need to experiment and explore. And I think that's one of the future key capabilities for any organization is the ability to explore and experiment. Like we saw with Audi that they're doing. And that's the new capability that Lego says, okay, we have a core capability around molding bricks, but the new capability we need is that to explore and experiment with future experiences. And you might say, like, what's the problem? Why aren't big companies good at experimenting? Why aren't they exploring more? Why do they get stuck? Well, it's a little like with adults. When they grow up, they stop experimenting. And we do it as adults as well, right? We realize that we grow more and more sort of comfortable in the ways that we've always been doing things. And the main challenge here is the fear of failing. The fear of misstepping, the fear of looking foolish, the fear of not being right the first time. And it grows with size. The bigger you get, the older you get, the more fearful you become of making a mistake. So how do we overcome this? How do we make our organizations be as playful as children? How do we ourselves, personally, in our lives, be more playful, be more experimenting, be more daring, and especially daring to fail and learn from it? And we're actually all hardwired to do so because as a child, we did nothing but experiment. Otherwise, we wouldn't learn how to walk, how to talk, how to do anything. And when a child tries to stand up for the first time and falls over, we don't go to that child and say, well, that's a failure right there. No, we say, great, try again. You're learning it. And we need that same thinking and mental model for our organizations and for what the intrapreneurs are doing in the big corporates and for what we should be doing in our own lives is constantly trying something new. And if it doesn't work, we learn something and we try again. Because if we don't, we become rigid and stuck, and you all know these cases. And there's many more probably coming. So this makes entrepreneurship really for the brave, because what they're doing is that they're fighting the immune system of the existing organization that don't want to fail, that don't want to show anything wrong, that want to be perfect and right all the time. And it's an ongoing battle. What typically happens for these entrepreneurs is either they give up and do as they're told, or they burn out and leave. And most recently, what happens is that they don't even start. And we see that with the new generations, the millennials, and especially the Gen Z workforce. They don't want to work in the big corporates. They don't want to get stuck in a silo somewhere and have to fight this. So it's really important also to attract and retain the future talent. So I believe, companies need to become ambidextrous in the future. That means that with one hand, they need to manage the existing business really well, and with the other hand, they need to invest and explore the future business. So roughly speaking, there's like 3 levels of innovation that should happen in any organization, and this is the way we structured it in Lego. First one is around the existing core business, continuous improvement, and Lego is probably the best in the world in injection molding of play material down to the nano size square, and we're becoming increasingly better at this. On top of this, you do core exploration, which basically explores things around the existing business, but it's still focusing on the existing operating model and the existing business model. It might digitize your products and services. It might add new technologies, but it's still within that realm. The final level is that of more radical exploration, where you explore future business opportunities, things that you haven't done, things that will be a new business model or a new operating model and potentially won't be able to live inside the existing business. So the first 2 levels can happen within the existing mothership, but the third one have to happen outside. And that's my experience. You cannot try to do something radical within the existing business unless it's exactly the same operating model, the exactly same business model. It's just not going to work. The immune system will kill it off. And you probably don't even want to spin it in later unless it's something you see really fits in. But if it doesn't, it's better to let it live outside. So at Lego, we obviously have the brick business. We have now a bunch of innovation labs in the existing mothership around the value chain, and then we established Lego Ventures to be that arm that can explore the future business for the company. New business areas, adding more legs to the company to walk on. So these innovation labs are anchored around the core capability areas inside the company. And what are those? Well, obviously, we have the brick business, and they have a lab that constantly develops that business. But then we have manufacturing. We have a marketing agency. Actually, Lego's marketing agency is probably the biggest and strongest within marketing to children in the world. We have education that helps figuring out how play materials can become educational at the same time. Publishing that supports our core business, but actually has become the #1 publisher of children's books. Digital games that also provides digital games for the product lines, but now become one of the major players in creating games for children. So all these things are actually very strong capabilities. And now we created an innovation lab in each of these. And they work very similar to what you heard from Audi. So it's sort of multidisciplinary teams in an end-to-end structure, which means they're able to take projects from very early stage all the way to fully proven, validated business model and product market fit. And it's a skeleton structure, which means they have bits and pieces of all the key capabilities they need to have, but to really do things, they need to source staff on demand based on the needs that the projects have. Now, and one of the things that we've been working on is how do we build the culture for the entrepreneurs in these teams to withstand resistance, the fight. We actually spent some time with Navy SEALs because we thought, who are the teams in the world that are really facing a lot of resistance all the time? And what is characterized a Navy SEAL team is that if they are successful, nobody will hear about it because it's all covered up and it's secret. And it's a little like what the Innovation Lab happens. It's always the downstream teams that gets the fame of something becoming big. And if they fail, they'll be dead in a ditch somewhere. So it's not a very promising outlook and prospect. So we said, how can we learn from how these teams, still manage to have a strong spirit? And one of the things we learned was that they spend a lot of time on debriefing. When they've done a project, they really debrief, and that means it's almost like therapeutical. They go through therapy together as a group in understanding what went wrong, what did we learn, how can we recover from this. So what we did from our teams was we created something symbolic, but we called it a safe house for the teams. And that would be every month for 2 days, we would take them out and spend time on basically healing from all the wounds and the hardship from working in this organization. Further to this, we also created a number of principles, a little like what MIT have in their media lab with Joe Ito. Sort of what are the core principles that we live by and that makes us strong? And Navy SEALs have the same, that they live by, certain rules that makes them resilient to the resistance that there will be. And then we have the mental model of saying, as a team, you need to think really big, but your main task is to de-risk what we're doing. By de-risking it as much as possible, you avoid the traps, and you also mitigate the resistance. So what is the least amount of time, least amount of resource, least amount of money we can spend on understanding this, on exploring this new field? And it's a challenge in many big organizations because executives have a tendency of throwing a lot of cash at something they want it badly solved. And with a lot of cash comes a lot of people, comes a lot of steering committees, SVPs, and all of a sudden you have a project that's too big to fail. And this is really what you want to avoid, because these projects can havoc through organizations for years before anybody dares to shut them down. And when they're shut down, it's very traumatic. People are laid off, and everybody says, let's not do that again. So keeping it small is the challenge. The second thing is to develop empathy. As an organization, as a core capability, how do you develop empathy? And why do you need that? You need it to be able to constantly sense what's going on in the world. So for Lego, we made this metaphor where we said, if you want to understand how the lion hunts, don't go to the zoo, go to the savannah. And it means you need to go to the natural habitat of where the changes are happening. And that's a strong metaphor, again, something you can write on the wall that people will constantly remind themselves, let's go and check in the field if this assumption we have is actually true. And from this, we develop opportunity spaces. And opportunity spaces is basically an area, a field that we believe we as a company could have a strong impact in and would be relevant as a future business area. And from this, a little like with Audi, we start iterating and ideating into this space to figure out what are the key pain points. And then creating prototypes around that. And we try not to call them prototypes, because when you tell a designer or an engineer to make a prototype, they want to make something that actually works. And we don't want that. We want to fake it. And this is an example from IDEO where they had to do an app for children, for a client. And instead of starting to code what this might be like, they printed an iPhone on a foam board, carved out a hole where the screen is, the foam board is hanging from the ceiling, the guy's behind, she's in front, laptop is recording, and when she pokes, he responds. And I think actually this was for Sesame Street, and the app is actually out there. And in 2 hours, they had recorded 2 or 3 of their initial ideas. In the subsequent hours, they had children in to test those concepts. In half a day, they already had some clear direction of which of our ideas are moving in the right direction. And that's the type of speed that you want in these projects. And again, using the Google Sprint methodology and saying, that allows you to actually be able to, in a week, understand whether or not your ideas are moving in the right direction. And the labs at Lego works in 2-week work cycles. That means every 2 weeks, they are validating or testing some of their assumptions. Some of them might be broken down into very small pieces, but still enough to constantly, there's a 2-week work cycle that you look at. So you don't end up working for months on something without really challenging yourself. Obviously working with a lot of partners, and Lego have really learned this the hard way as well. The company started thinking it could do everything itself, and now it's become really strong through its partners. The Lego movie came through Warner Brothers, realizing that we need some strong content partners around these things. And it's helped really elevate the portfolio and the company to new places. And then obviously doing small pilot market validations. And again, the learning from us is that the smaller the better. Really try to make it quick and small, and not spend too much time. In terms of the strategic venture activities, this is a new tool in the toolbox, basically, that allows us to strategically invest into companies in these new identified opportunity spaces, or build our own startups into these spaces. And what is really tricky and key here is, what is the long-term perspective of that? When you start building new opportunity spaces, how do they, over time, become part of the company, of the bigger system? Should they all be spun in? Or should they live as separate things? And this speaks to, how do you make the company start behaving less like a finite company, but more like an ecosystem of a number of different smaller entities that are all working together? And so we have the existing business, and we have these core capabilities that I mentioned earlier. And what we're actually trying to do is we're trying to decouple or detach some of these core capabilities and say, these are the all rights new areas of interest for us. And they should be able to support not only the existing business, but also the new business areas. So as we're exploring a new opportunity space and investing in companies into these spaces, we obviously want to connect in terms of leveraging the capabilities and resources that we have and the unfair advantage that is inside the existing business. And also connect those companies that we invest in so that over time, we're building a new ecosystem in parallel to the existing business. And that these will over time dissolve and become part of a bigger, coherent system. And that helps also build new capabilities into the existing business system as it rubs off from these new companies that we're working with. And we might also invest in companies purely based on supporting the detachment of some of these core capability areas, like legal publishing, could become its own separate business area, supporting the whole ecosystem and not just the existing business. And over time, more opportunity spaces will come that we will invest in. And it'll look like more like a swarm of entities working together than the traditional org chart or finite company. And that's the hypothesis that we're working towards. And over time, that will make each entity quite small, autonomous, and independent, but still under the same mission, under the same mandate, and be able to support multiple entities in that same system. And that will make it act and behave more like a small company, in spite the fact that it's actually growing in size. It's becoming bigger and bigger. So how do you then add and capture the strategic value in this system? How do you make it fluent across? And we put up some of the things that you can add from the existing business. It's obviously funding, but that's the least of it. It's the expertise you have. It's the network, the doors you can open as a company, as a brand, and the brand power itself in being associated with the Lego brand. That helps a lot of new areas to actually grow. At the same time, you want to capture strategic value from this. So you're building new capabilities through the investments you do, through the startups that you create. You get access to talent. All of a sudden, you have a network of people around the company, people that are not working in the mothership, but are associated around the company. And you can have more staff on demand through this. So the ecosystem will expand as you form new business units over time. So the learning from this is, don't aim to get it right the first time, aim to learn. I mean, it's easy to say, it's very, very hard to do for companies. It goes also for when investing in startups. You need to accept that most of the learning you will extract, the value, will be the learning that you get from that experience, from rubbing shoulders with people that think different, with other technologies. And there's a thing about measuring the performance of these projects, both the internal ones as well as those you invest in, and make it less about a finite financial result or return, but more about the capabilities that you're building along the way. And look at it a little like a black map. And what you need to do is throw light on this map. And the more light you get on the map, the quicker, the more successful these teams are. It's sort of experimentation velocity. And you can put that into KPIs to really understand which of the teams, which of the startups are really functioning well, because very few startups are actually lean startups. And it's a mistake. You might think that, well, the startup probably got it, and they know what to do. But actually helping them becoming lean startups is a big part of being an investor. So let me just close with a concrete case of a project that we did in one of our innovation labs. And it was around these A-folds that I talked about in the beginning, the adult fans. Because with the growth of the company and the success that we had the last 15 years, and the company grew more than 500% in the last 15 years, we also seen a massive growth in the adult fans. And they're actually in the millions now around the world. And these are adults that are highly passionate about the product, about the company. And one of the things they're good at is actually designing their own products. And they're doing that because, remember, 10,000 PhDs and engineers, they're very good at making products. So they do that. And but obviously they can't sell those through Lego, so they go on platforms like Etsy. Etsy is an online platform for homemade products made by consumers, sold to other consumers. And if you Google Lego, you'll find thousands and thousands of products clearly looking like Lego, but not made by the company. It's made by fans, and they're selling quite well to other fans. Half of them clearly infringing the brand. And this was the challenge, actually, that I got. One of my first tasks when I came into the company is like, we need to do something about this. And I spoke to legal, and they said, well, if we had 500 lawyers in 5 years, we could shut this down. But most likely we'll be killing the brand, because these are our biggest fans. Why do we want to do that? So we said, okay, if we can't beat them, let's join them. How can we collaborate with these guys? And this was at the same time as iTunes came out, an app store. And we looked at that and said, well, that's actually clever from Apple. They could have said, we know what 20 apps you guys need. There you go. I probably wouldn't have gone anywhere as it is today. Instead, they said, well, you guys know what apps you need. We just provide the platform, and you create them. So what if we could do the same for Lego and say, you know what products you need. Here's the platform. You make them. You design them. We make them. So the first thing we did was to ally ourselves with a number of the leading entrepreneurs in the market. And together with them, we came up with the idea of Lego Ideas. And Lego Ideas is like a platform like Kickstarter. That means you can come with your product idea on the platform and say, I want to have this made, but Lego won't look at it. The community will look at it only. And you need minimum 10,000 supporters from the community, and a supporter is a person that's willing to buy the product at a specific price point if it is launched. And only if you get those 10,000, Lego will look at it. And we are then committed to launching 3 to 4 projects from this platform every year in full distribution. So when we presented this idea to management, very happy, say, wouldn't this be great? And this was before Kickstarter, by the way. So there wasn't really a strong case out there saying, everybody's doing this. They said, absolutely not. We should not do this. 2 key reasons. One, we got all the best designers in the world. They work right here. Why should we let these A-folds do this? And by the way, A-folds, in the mind of the management back then, was like 35-year-old males, single, living in their mom's basement. Really geeks. Now we all know they are sort of the billionaires of tomorrow. But back then, it was a sort of a stereotypical view on that. We knew there was a lot of professionals in this network, and there was a lot of interest groups that could really actually pull something. But that was the first reason. The second reason was that the competition would be able to steal all the great ideas, because we would get thousands of ideas into this platform. The competition could just pick all of them up. Why should we do that? Let's have them secret in a vault somewhere in the bank where only, special people can see them. The sort of traditional corporate, way of thinking. So we said, okay, that's going to be uphill. How do we de-risk this? How do we still do it, but really, really de-risk it? So we said, let's not build our own platform. Let's have someone else do it with an arm's length. Let's not call it Lego. Let's call it something else. And let's do it in only one market where language-wise we can completely isolate it. So we went to Japan, because Japan is a well-established Lego market, but everybody speaks Japanese and not a whole lot of English. So we thought, let's isolate it there. We went through a small design company in Japan that already had a platform. We didn't spend a single hour developing a platform. It was there. We just put it on there. We called it Kuzo, which means wish in Japanese. And when people looked at it, they thought, well, that's some fan that have made this. It's about Lego, but clearly fan-made. So we had an arm's length. We de-risked it, and the management said, yes, okay, you can test it like that. And the first product to come on the platform was this one. It's called the Shanghai. It's a real Japanese-made submarine. It's the only submarine in the world that can go down to 6 kilometers depth underwater, manned. And it's because of the deep seas around Japan. And it was an engineering and national pride of the country. And it was one of the engineers on the project that actually put it on there and said, make that one. It got the number of supporters. We launched it. And with zero marketing, in just a few months, it became the best-selling product in the Japanese market ever in that price point. Because everybody bought it. Kids bought it. Engineers bought it. Nationalists bought it. Everybody bought it. And it proved not only that this is a great engagement platform for the fans because they loved it, and they got, the idea originator got 1% of the turnover back, but more importantly, they got the recognition. So in the box, you'll find the picture of the person with the idea, the story of that fan, and that was worth more than any cash could provide for the fans. But we also understood that this can actually be a new revenue driver and a new business model for us. So we then got permission to launch the big platform, and we were looking for a strong idea as the first one to really prove this internationally. And we were lucky because we got Lego Minecraft just after 2 months of running the platform internationally. And Minecraft is this online game where you build with blocks, a little like Lego, but just digital. And at the time, there was 80 million active users, 80, on the platform. And we were looking for 10,000 supporters. In 24 hours, we had 400,000 supporters. 3 million people went on the site in those 24 hours. The servers crashed 3 times during the night. The team was up all night. It was crazy. We launched this one SKU 6 months later, only in the small online store of the Swedish company behind Minecraft. And it sold like crazy, with zero marketing. So much that all the big accounts that we had called our executives, Walmart, Target, Toys R Us, called our executives to say, what the hell are you doing? Why are you not giving this to us? And they didn't even know about it because it was like small pilot, somewhere in the world. It became a full product line, and for the last 5 years, it's been one of the top 3 growth drivers of the company because it attracted a lot of new audiences, also above the ages that we would normally able to attract. So this proved that, okay, this can actually be a growth driver for us as a company. And we launched more than 25 projects on this platform in the last 5 or 6 years. And these two, you probably know, it's Back to the Future and Ghostbusters. And when we launched those, no child knew what that was, right? Because these are movies from the 80s, and there wasn't a new Ghostbuster movie out yet at that time. And still, they're sold like crazy, because these adult fan communities of fans of Back to the Future and Ghostbusters are really passionate, and there's a super high conversion rate. So it almost didn't matter what we launched, as long as there were 10,000 supporters, and we would have all the data showing how are this geographical split, what is the education that these people were having. We were harvesting a lot of data from the platform, from millions of contributors, that would give really validated data and understanding about the market. And more importantly, we didn't spend any marketing. And that was really interesting in a time where the traditional marketing tools were failing, because TV commercials are no longer really working because nobody watches Flow TV. And so instead of that empowering now the users to become the marketeers is way more powerful than anything else you can do. So the key learnings from this was not so much the revenue we generated, but really the know-how, the capabilities, and the culture that we built ahead of time. Because not only did we get permission to launch a platform, we opened up the mindset of the executives in understanding what open innovation and open platforms can actually mean for the business. And starting tearing down the walls around the company and embracing the ecosystem in a completely broader and different way. And that's the really long-term benefit and value of this. So finally, guys, let me just come a recommendation to you guys to be a rebel in your own organization. Be an intrapreneur, but be diplomatic about it. Because it's easy to set things on fire. It's really hard to make people follow once you've got a great idea. So here's the top 5 advice on being an impactful and successful intrapreneur. And the first thing is that people will hate your project. There will be resistance. And this is natural human behavior. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of not being part of this project, of if this happens, what will happen to my job, my position, my role? And you just have to accept that to begin with, but then you have to work on ways to overcome these resistances. And it starts by understanding the rules that you're breaking. Because you will be breaking a lot of rules, both formal and informal, to do this, but by understanding the past and understanding why these rules are there, why are people thinking like this, why are people reacting like this, you can start dismantling that. You can start mitigating with that and pick people up and get them on board instead. Because what you want to do is build a tribe over time so that this becomes more of a movement instead of just another product or just another project. It's a mindset change. It's a new way of working. It's a new way of thinking about the business. And to build that tribe, you need to write a lot of love letters. Quite literally, actually. You need to be really humble. You need to be really kind, respectful of the existing business, knowing that you're standing on the shoulders of giants as you're looking into the future. And it's the existing business paying your salary, right? So be respectful of that. Show people that you are humble and not an arrogant idiot, basically. Finally, you make other people shine. And that means that everyone who's been on board, who's been part, even those that were very resistant in the beginning, but finally said, well, maybe it's a good idea, make them shine when you're successful. That makes sure that they will come back for more, and over time, you'll have this massive movement of people that want to change the company together with you. So you basically need to become diplomatic rebels. Thank you, guys. All right, any questions?
David, I've just spilled something here. That was really engaging. Thanks very much. The last piece I was particularly interested in around only break the rules you understand. Can you give me an example of when you've broken a rule you didn't understand and what happened, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the areas that these teams often struggle with is the classical sort of procurement, legal, finance. And if you start by trying to understand why do we have these rules, and they relate to something that have been learned through many, many years, and there's a deep-rooted understanding of it have to be like this. Because only when you do really understand this, you can start telling the story, and this is a lot about storytelling. You can start telling and composing the story of why now things need to be different, or how this now needs to evolve into something that is different from this. And an example of us not doing this was that we at some point, and that was actually with this Japanese company that we contracted on Lego Ideas on Kuso, we made a contract that in no way followed the guidelines of procurement or legal. And we overlooked that they should have been a closer ally and partner on this, and they came after us. And actually, my boss at the time got an official warning in terms of not doing that again. And so after that, actually, what we did was that we created 3 desks in our lab for legal, procurement, and finance, and they each could come and sit and work, and representative from them. And actually, the young people from these teams would love that. So they came down. And over time, they even started, developing their own new platforms for more agile projects on their own initiative. And that's some of the ways that, you can go about it.
Hello, Bertram from Bayer. I'm totally attracted by your red single Lego brick. I never got attracted by these ready-to-go kits where you have just to assemble a pre-designed thing. I was wondering, however, of course, how you can develop a business model with a single brick, and I thought maybe you could switch from selling bricks to selling creativity. I think what you showed at the very end is a little bit about this already. you could say creative ego, yeah, CEGO. I've already named for it. Have you thought about this, going into the business of selling creativity? I mean, you are so right by saying that at the beginning we are losing probably creativity, and it's a lot about, I mean, there's a brick and all your imagination can do everything out of it, while if you come up with a pre-planned thing, there's very little creativity in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we definitely realize that we're actually part of the problem ourselves. And looking at how Lego products have developed in the last 60 years is from, you know, the products in the 60s and 70s were kind of very naive, sort of very open-ended, and you could easily put on other bricks and you couldn't even tell the difference. Where now the models are huge and they're perfect. And they, by the way, look like a Star Wars ship, which have to look like this. And that means the child doesn't even dare to put another brick on because now it's not right. Now it's not the perfect one. And I think this is part of the challenge we're seeing with the new generations of kids, also those consuming social media, is that everything has to be perfect. So how do we break that down? And I think you're spot on in terms of the journey we are on in realizing what we're really good at is actually creating creative systems. And we call actually the brick system in play. And so it's not about the play material, it's about the system that lies behind, where the more you invest in the system, the more you can do. There's sort of an accelerating return in terms of what you're able to do with the system. And what we're looking at now in the new opportunity spaces we're pursuing is saying, how can we take that system thinking into other areas and more become the platform that we actually already been, but more, you know, be that open platform towards the world. So, good thinking.
Hey, so thanks a lot, David.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
All right, thanks. Thanks, guys.